Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to ROIDS, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
Here's an interesting one to start the day. Why do some bodybuilders, or a lot of bodybuilders, have a herniated belly button? Why do they have that thing where their belly button is sticking out, or there's a lump where their belly button is? The answer to this is growth hormone use. So what happens when you start using growth hormone is that area in your stomach is sensitive to it. In many people are genetically predisposed to this. And that spot in your abdominal wall where your belly button is, when you were a fetus inside of your mother, there was a cord called your umbilical cord, and that is how you got your nutrition from your mom, and it's how you put your waste out back to your mom, and then she would filter your waste for you, because that's the way umbilical cords work. So that was a hole in your abdominal wall, and your abdominal wall, when that umbilical cord was cut when you were born, then that hole, it closed up, okay? But it's always a weak spot in the abdominal wall. It just is, because it was open at one time. It's not as strong as the other areas. So one thing that growth hormone does is when you use it, it makes your stomach distended, because it slows down the rate at which food travels through your digestive system. So while you have the growth hormone in you, your belly sticks out more so than if you hadn't used it for a few days, because growth hormone only lasts about 12 hours after an injection, and then it's out, it's gone. And so the effects of growth hormone, they pretty much go away if you don't use it for a few days. And then also they come on very quickly, after only 24 hours or so after the first injection, 48 hours, 72 hours, something like that after the first injection, pharmaceutical grade growth hormone begins to show itself. So anyways, I had an umbilical hernia, so I'll just tell you what happened with me. This is really common, you see a lot of guys with the little bump there. So, I always had an innie belly button. My belly button was always an innie, a pretty deep innie. Because I remember one time, my sister teased me like, oh, that's a perfect belly button for a piercing or something. And I was like, no, it's not. And so once I started using a little bit more testosterone, like a higher dosage, that was when I started to get bigger than, pretty much most everyone, who's not a bodybuilder, just bigger than, everybody at the gym for the most part, except for like other bodybuilders. And at that same time, I also started using generic growth hormone, or a little bit after I increased the test, probably so that I was always running between 700 milligrams per week to, somewhere up to like 1,250 milligrams per week or so when I was doing my cycles. Because before that, I had been doing cycles, where I'd use maybe like a cc or 2 cc's of testosterone per week, so maybe 350 milligrams of testosterone per week, or 500 or 250 milligrams or something like that of testosterone per week. That's what I had been doing before. So I upped the test, started growing a lot, and then I put in the generic growth hormone a couple months later, and that was when I started getting like a really quite significant strength gain. Like at that point, I'd be doing my work sets for the bench press with 3 plates and doing, squats, ass to the grass, also with, 3 plates or more for, sets of 10, working sets of 10. That was when my body really started to thicken up and get a lot stronger. But during this time of, very large gains for me, where I went from, being somebody who could probably, before I upped the test and everything, and before I started going through this phase right here where I was using the generic growth hormone, which gave me sexual dysfunction, by the way. It made my dick a little bit smaller while I was using it. And then after I discontinued, because it was a prolactin thing, so it had the same influences like Tren. And then, when I got off that generic growth hormone, my dick went back to 100% normal size. Yep. And so while I was going through this period of gains, I was doing, I was lifting heavier, I was doing doing the deadlifts, with, more than, 4 plates on each side, and, the squats going deep, etc. Doing the barbell rows with I think I was using like 2.5 plates at the time, for sets of 10 or something like that. So that was when I was using weights, that they were not anything like a natural, It was when I went from this phase of being like, maybe I could be a fake natural, to like, no, like, that's not the, because when you just go to a gym, that's not the kind of weights that you see, the people who are not, like dead serious using. And I mean dead serious as in either they're like a career weightlifter or they use steroids, one of the two. So for the most part, there's always exceptions. I've always got to say that so that guys don't come in the comments and start going, I like the comments. The social part of this is my favorite part about doing the podcast and like doing like YouTube and everything like that. I like hearing from you guys. I like it when you comment. So feel free to drop in the comments or something like that if you're listening to this on a commentable platform, and say hi, because I like to hear from you guys. So anyways, my strength increased a lot, and then all of a sudden I started noticing, what the hell is going on with my belly button? Because I'd always had this innie belly button, right? A deep innie belly button. I started noticing that there was like this kind of like protrusion at the top, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I would like touch it, and it would like go in. But then like I'd notice later in the day it would like come out again. And I'd be like, what the fuck? And I'd like press it back in again. And I didn't know like what the hell was going on. And because it started getting progressive, like, and then I'd notice like it was further out, or it was out like all the time. This little like bump, it was like a little marble. That's like what it looked like. It was like a half sphere. So like a half, like a dome, like a half of a marble, right above the hole of my, where the belly button goes in, right above that, there was this little spot like sticking out like this. And I'm like, what the hell? And so it's getting worse. And then like eventually it's like out all the time. And, during this time too, I went from using generic growth hormone to pharmaceutical grade growth hormone. And it definitely like kept on progressing on the pharmaceutical grade growth hormone. But it was also because of heavy lifting, like it was because I was getting stronger. I was getting stronger in the gym, lifting heavier weights. And by the time that it got really, significant, and it was like the tip of a little fucking like thumb sticking out, above my belly button. You know, it's your organs coming out. It's your intestines coming out. You know, coming out through that hole in your abdominal wall. So, you know, I'd always be pressing it back in. I'd always have my finger there. You know, pressing it back in. Do a set, press it back in. I'm like, what the hell? I've got this like hole in the integrity of my body, you know, of the structure of my body. So that was really bothering me. And yeah, just like I said, you know, there's this really popular guy on Instagram, Joesthetics. And I actually know him in real life. You guys probably know him because he's one of the most popular like physiques or like classic bodybuilding type like models on Instagram. And so anyways, he's got one of these hernias right now too. If you look at his thing on Instagram, he's dealing with this. So yeah, I recommended him my surgeon in Thailand, you know. He did a pretty good job. I got mine fixed. I got mine fixed with a military surgeon in the countryside in Thailand. They have him working on all the military guys over there, so I thought it would be a good idea to go see him. And anyways, yeah, so, you know, after the heavy lifting combined with taking the growth hormone, expanded, you know, that hole in my stomach where there was a lot of pressure while I was lifting, you know, a lot of pressure in my inside my body, and it was putting a lot of pressure on the area. I'm getting IGF-1. The area is extra sensitive, you know, to growing, you know, because of the nature of it. Your belly button is a very sensitive area to growth hormone. If you inject the growth hormone in the belly fat around your belly button, it absorbs better than if you inject it into growth or into belly fat. Sorry, not belly fat. It absorbs better if you inject it into belly fat around the belly button than if you inject it other places on your body, like other parts of fat on your body. Okay, so the belly button and the growth hormone have a synergy. And like I said, not everybody gets this thing where your belly button hole grows and then, you know, you get a hernia there, but it's pretty common. I mean, you see this among bodybuilders, and it's like almost everybody that has these. You know, it's either they're black, because black people are genetically predisposed to this. A lot of them are born with umbilical hernias. It's like it's a phenotype that commonly appears in their genetics. So a lot of black guys that you see, if they have this, it's probably not because of growth hormone. It's just a genetic thing that they were born with. But all the other races, if they have this and, you know, they're a bodybuilder, they probably are using growth hormone, because there's so much tension on that area when you're doing the heavy lifting, like the squats and the deadlifts. That area is sensitive, and then you got the high IGF-1, and, you know, like, there's a lot of pressure, and the hole starts getting a little bit bigger, and then your intestines start sticking out. So yeah, the growth hormone belly button. You know, I got surgery on mine. They closed the hole and they put a little like mesh. It's like I can feel it. I can like reach through my like, you know, I can like press into my stomach area and like feel the mesh like implant in there. Because they get the hole where your belly button was having the problem or whatever, you know, the muscle, the rip, the tear. That's what a hernia is. It's a tear in your stomach muscle. And they sew it back together, right? And so then it heals. And then they reinforce it with this like mesh or like net of like surgical plastic material. And so they create like a wire frame over the area where the rip was to like reinforce it. So now I have that in my stomach. I can feel that right now if I like reach above my belly button. But hey, I got no more freaking hernia anymore, you know? I got a flat belly button again. Not this freaking thing sticking out like, and every time I freaking see that thing. That's why it was bothering me so much. And I was like, I need to get surgery on this and get this freaking taken care of. For one, it was a hole in the structural integrity of my body. So I was like, what the fuck? I have a hole in my abdominal wall. And then for the next thing, it was that, like, my finger was always there because I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't, like, like pressing it in, like, all the time. And then for, like, a year afterwards, too, my finger was still there because it was a habit. And you know what? I just don't like it. I don't like having holes in my body. So I needed to get surgery on that thing. A big shout out to the guys that are doing the text message based bodybuilding coaching with me. It is fun talking with you guys every day. You guys know who you are. And every day, I have like set times out of my day that I devote like probably like 3 to 4 hours actually each day responding to everybody's messages. And then at other times, like random times when I can, I respond to. But it's fun because a bunch of the guys that do the text message bodybuilding consulting with me, it's month to month. And a lot of these guys, they listen to the podcast and we talk and I get to know them. And they're like listeners of the podcast. So I enjoy getting to know these guys that are listening to the podcast, and then I get to know more about their personalities, about their situations, what they're doing, and talk with them. And then, like, we're in contact every day. Like, so we definitely create a friendship because it's like they become basically like part of my social circle. So that's been a really cool opportunity. I have really enjoyed doing the text message bodybuilding coaching and consulting with you listeners from
the Steroids podcast.
Okay, this next question is about steroid esters and why some of them take a while to be able to start feeling them. So even esters like enanthate, the most that they ever release in your blood, the most of the steroid that they ever release in your blood happens 24 hours, within the first 24 hours after the injection. And then every day after that, it's like a little bit less until about like 5 days after the injection. And then it starts dropping off like every day quite a bit less until it's nothing after about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, depending on your metabolism of steroids. So that's the way that like one shot of testosterone enanthate behaves in the body. And the testosterone in most of the steroids, actually, they have to make changes. There's some steroids that don't need to do this and they're a little bit quicker acting, but really all steroids need to do it to some degree, actually. So I guess it would be better to say some steroids have other effects outside of this mechanism, and that is that they've got to make your cell start expressing like parts of its DNA more exaggerated than other parts. So when the steroid interacts with the membrane, there's a receptor on the membrane of the cell, on all the cells in your body, and it's the androgen receptor, the male hormone receptor. Okay, so the steroid comes in and docks like a spaceship with, it's flowing through the bloodstream, the steroid, and then it sees the open androgen receptor, like on the muscle cell, and or on any cell of your body, and it docks with that like a spaceship docking out of the bloodstream, and then it transmits a message to that androgen receptor, which then transmits a message to the nucleus, the DNA of the muscle cell or whatever cell. And, that's how it tells the cell to exert those masculine, androgenic, or anabolic muscle building effects. So that process doesn't just happen 100% within 24 hours. Even though the steroid peaked in your bloodstream 24 hours after injection, like with a test enanthate injection, that getting that whole process going, where like those kind of cellular changes are happening. A message is transmitted to the DNA, the nucleus of your cell, and it makes the DNA of your body act slightly differently to make it so that you can be more muscular and etc., or more masculine, more manly looking. And so it doesn't just happen when you start a steroid cycle. Even if you do Dianabol, which is that peaks in your body 45 minutes after taking it, 30-45 minutes after taking it. And even if you go and do that, and then you wait 24 hours, you're still not going to have the maximum effects of the Dianabol, even though it's already been peaked in your blood, and it's your first day though. Okay, so that's because you will get some effect from doing it like that, because it has some effects outside of the androgen receptor, right? Most steroids effects happen inside the androgen receptor, and they have to do with changing the way that the DNA is expressed in your body. That's the main scientifically known way that steroids have exert their actions. If you talk to a scientist and you said, how does steroids work? He would point to the androgen receptor and say, this is how they function, is by doing that and having the DNA of the cell change. But there are other ways though that the steroids can work. There's other receptors, such as glucocorticoid receptors, that have effects on cortisol in the body, which is the chemical that inhibits protein synthesis. Okay, so your body's always doing this fight between protein synthesis and protein breakdown, and steroids can have some of those, especially certain steroids like trenbolone, for example. Steroids actually that have have more body recomposition activity or ability usually have more activity with glucocorticoid receptors. So that's definitely an effect of them. Anyways, though, but that's why some of the effects of steroids can be felt, immediately. But then, the full power of the steroids, and it doesn't matter, what steroid you take, it doesn't matter whether you're taking trenbolone acetate, D-bol, testenanthate, trenbolone enanthate. You never feel the full effects after one day, even if the drug has peaked in your bloodstream. You never feel the full effects because it takes time for that androgen receptor DNA expression change to happen. So that's the answer to why esters don't kick in quickly, and how why esters don't kick in quickly. I was reading the question, and it said something about how milligrams are released over a period of a week, and I think we went over that. Yeah. And the reason why the orals or the quick acting injectables like Tesprop or Trenace or something like that can kick in, fully within a week, and most of the way within a few days, is because you're really loading up those milligrams that are available in your blood right away when you first start the cycle. Because when you take the Trenace or the Tesprop, that whole dosage is in and out of your body in 2 to 3 days, whereas with something like testenanthate, it's not out of your body for 2 to 3 weeks. So it's a lot more concentrated of a dosage in a short period of time, and so that's kind of giving that process where it takes a little while for the steroid to kick in. That's like kickstarting it. You're kickstarting that process and speeding it up by loading a greater number of milligrams into your body quickly. It makes it quicker. Some people do what's called steroid cycle front loading to try and get this effect with longer acting injectables, and for some reason it doesn't work as well as just using the shorter acting injectables. But some people will, and I mean, I've done it, of course. I did it on my first cycle. I just didn't really think it worked that much better, which is where you like double your dosage, front loading, which is where like you double your dosage the first week or two of your cycle in order to get it to like kick in quicker, because then you're loading more of those milligrams from the steroids right up in the front part of your cycle there. So since you have more of those milligrams in your bloodstream, it makes that process where the steroid cycle, where you start feeling and it kicks in, go quicker. So like, for example, on my first steroid cycle, my first injection that I did ever was I had two syringes filled with 600 milligrams of testosterone each. And I did one in my left hip and I did the other in my right hip. And my cycle that I wanted to do was 600 milligrams of testosterone per week. But for that first injection, I injected 1,200 milligrams per week because I wanted to front load the cycle to get it to start quicker, because I was like really anxious for results. It didn't really have the effect that I wanted to. It did get me like swelling up and having a lot of water retention really quickly, but it didn't get me having the effect of like increased muscularity and like hardness and performance that I wanted. So, front loading that big dosage of testosterone for a first cycle like that, I would say probably not necessary. And I probably would have thought, the same thing if I didn't do that. Yeah. So that's front loading. So now we got over the ester thing. Let's get on to the next topic. For human growth hormone to be most effective, is starting young a good way to retain youth, or does starting when you're older revert aging anyway? Yeah. So there's speculation about this, and I think among the anti-aging community, it's generally accepted that starting growth hormone replacement therapy around age 30 and then continuing it up, into your 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, is the best way to do anti-aging. Like, that's the optimal way to do anti-aging with growth hormone, although it works at any age when you start taking it. But if somebody is trying to do anti-aging, where they like look young for longer, then using the growth hormone when they start to be about age 30, that's when the natural hormones start to come down in growth hormone quite a bit. And that keeps the some of the youth. It prevents some of the damage from happening to the body, that aging, the damage and breakdown that aging is. And so, yeah, metformin at 1 to 2,000 milligrams per day, and human growth hormone at 1 to 2 IUs per day is that's like the standard anti-aging protocol for growth hormone use. And they started at 30 years old, but it works if you start it at any age. And somebody that starts it at an older age is going to see a much more dramatic effect than someone that takes it at 30 years old. Because, one of the main things that you notice with growth hormone within that first month is your skin tightens up. So your skin, you won't be able to like pull it away from your body as far. Like, it's just more sucked in. And I don't mean sucked in as in like it makes you look ripped, sucked in, because growth hormone actually, it gives a little bit of water retention. So it doesn't like give you like a sucked in ripped look. When I say sucked in, I mean that it's tight, or it feels like there's a lot of, you just can't be like pulling that away. It feels more dense or something like that. It feels more high quality. Okay, it feels high quality, like your natural skin
that you feel normally is like fake leather, and then you get on the growth hormone and it's like premium premium leather. That's what it turns your skin into. And it's definitely noticed within the first month. And so me, personally, at 30 years old, I noticed this, okay? Which is pretty crazy because, I mean, if I notice this effect and it's prominent, imagine, if you are 60 years old and you get this kind of skin tightening effect. There has been studies done on growth hormone and anti-aging, and the effects of growth hormone usually reduce the aging in someone's skin by 10 to 20 years. And they've actually studied this and studied like the thickness of the skin and like the collagen production that happens inside the skin, because collagen production is a major effect of growth hormone. Like if you want to stimulate collagen production in your skin, you take growth hormone, not those supplements that break down in your stomach and don't do anything. Growth hormone is a major collagen producer. So, yep, that's that. Next question, Yay asks, can you go over this in your next podcast, please? I was watching one of Regan Grimes' videos of a 10,000 calorie cheat day with Juan Morel, that's an IFBB Pro bodybuilder, and totally noticed this. He seemed distant and didn't talk much. I know that could be personally somewhat, but how do the drugs affect this? Thanks for the podcast. Yeah, well, he's probably got a bunch of things going on. I mean, usually these bodybuilders are like really focused, bodybuilding is, and just like pro athletes, but especially bodybuilders, because it's an isolation sport, or isolation hobby or whatever. And then also, you take a lot of steroids. If you're an IFBB Pro, you're taking a lot of steroids. All right. Don't let anybody tell you that that's not the case. Like, just don't be, that's pretty gullible. I mean, look at that shit. And then you have these guys telling you they're not on a lot of steroids. They're just on a little bit. What the heck? Yeah, right. So yeah, so this guy, seriously, you see these videos of him, and then you see him say like, I don't take a lot of steroids, I just take a little bit of steroids. And you're looking at that, you're going to be like, yeah, right, dude. Yeah, right. If you're in your right mind, if you're thinking with your brain. Next question. Dave asks, what's up, Dan? Question for your next podcast. If I run 400 to 450 milligrams of testosterone for a year straight, will this do anything negative to my health? I have a lot prescribed to me for testosterone replacement therapy, and I wanted to put on a little more size this year. Thanks. There's been testing for 20-week usage of testosterone at various dosages. So going down from 150 milligrams per week, 300 milligrams per week, up to 600 milligrams per week, and doing that for 20 weeks. And then, checking the blood work before and after with like healthy young men. And the results of those studies is that the testosterone didn't cause, after 20 weeks like that, it didn't cause any negative effects on like general blood work, except for the dosage of the testosterone increased the level of the blood cholesterol. So they noticed that there was an increase in cholesterol depending on how high the dosage of testosterone was, with the 600 milligrams being a higher cholesterol level than the 150 milligrams or the 300 milligrams. And then also with that, they saw that the muscle mass keeps going up in a dose-dependent relationship over those 20 weeks with, the 150 milligrams guy growing more muscle, or the 300 milligram guy growing more muscle than the 150 milligram guy, and the 600 milligram guy growing more muscle than the 300 milligram guy. And, you know, guys, this actually keeps on going up indefinitely. And I really mean that when I say indefinitely. So there have been studies that have been done by doctors these doctors, they've done studies with their patients, and there's also been some studies at universities that have been done, you know, back in the golden era. And, you know, I don't talk about this super frequently, but I mean, this is findable. This is findable on online. If you are really searching for these studies. But, you know, there were some studies that were done that used, you know, mega dosages of steroids in humans and like see how they respond, like at like what dosages. And they also did it in animals too. And you know, so I mentioned in the previous podcast that, you know, I said, you guys are not going to believe this, you know, but they gave the dogs like 100,000 milligrams of like Anavar per week or something. Well, they did dosages with humans at like 1/10 of those dosages that they did to the dogs or the other animals. They did some experiments on volunteers, golden era bodybuilders, and found you know, a linear response dosage dependent relationship in the dosage of steroids. So as the steroid dosage kept on increasing, with pretty much any steroid that was taken, because they tested quite a few, so did the muscle mass and the muscle mass and the strength of the user. So, and I mean, we all know that too. Everybody who's experienced with steroids knows that the more steroids you take, the bigger and stronger you get. And so that study just confirmed that, you know, up to a very, very high dosage. I mentioned, you know, up to around, you know, 5,000 to 10,000 milligrams per week of various steroids. And this study actually says it appears that the human appears to respond similarly to the dog in its response to high dosages of anabolic steroids, in that a dose-dependent linear relationship between the dosage and muscle mass and strength is achieved. So, you know, steroids taken more always makes you bigger and stronger. That's nothing new. That's nothing new. And you know, guys that take those large dosages like that, I'll tell you some of the side effects that they get is like a lot of more prostate growth and like heart enlargement, stuff like that. They're doing some damage to themselves. So don't think that that's some kind of free ticket. People that are that's definitely steroid abuse. And so people that are doing that kind of thing, it's going to come back and bite you. Next question is from Ian, and he asks, I look forward to every podcast release. I have heard you say good things about Superdrol, but I think you and Vigorous Steve have both said recently you didn't finish your cycles with it. I had some toxicity the last time that I used Superdrol. But I was, you know what? I used it right after I used Dianabol and Turinabol for a month. So I used Dianabol and Turinabol for a month, and then I went right into Superdrol, and I was using it, Superdrol, at like 30 to 50 milligrams per day. And I experienced some toxicity, and so then I had to cut it out, and that was why I did that. So when you experience toxicity, it's usually like tiredness, or you can see it like in your eyes, or lethargy or something like that, or maybe like appetite. And once you discontinue the oral steroid, when that happens, you feel back to normal after like 3 to 5 days or so. So I had some toxicity from the Superdrol. I'm not sure if Steve did too. He's pretty sensitive to toxicity from orals. He's more sensitive than I am, from me being around him and talking with him, and us doing cycles and stuff over time and talking with each other. That's the way I feel about how we compare with sensitivity to toxicity from orals. I personally handle orals fairly well. Most people do. Their toxicity in the way that they would make you feel, or that if you take a large dosage of them, it would like kill you or something. That's very overrated. You could take a huge dosage of oral steroids and not die. Like, it's a hormone, so it's not like a poison or like something that gets you high and like forces the release of like a lot of neurotransmitters, or like makes you stop breathing or something like that. It doesn't do those things. So it's a hormone, a signaling molecule, and the toxicity of them, it's overrated in like how dangerous it is. The real danger to using oral steroids long term is that your blood work is it doesn't look good when you're on oral steroids. Okay, when you're off oral steroids, when you come off of them, it goes back to normal after about 2 or 3 weeks. But when you're on them, like if you go get your blood work done, you're gonna have like multiple things, such as like your cholesterol, your lipids, and maybe some inflammation markers, maybe your liver enzymes, they'll be out of range, and it'll say like not normal, like on the blood test, right? So you can see that, and if you think, I've heard that steroids are safe and they don't have any side effects or something, because people just want to believe what they want to believe. So I don't know, but they might believe that. And then, they'll go get their blood test when they're on oral steroids, like in the middle of their cycle, and they'll see that their blood work has all this stuff that's like out of normal range, and it'll freak them out. So if you have blood work like that for extended periods of time, and, that adds up over years, where it's like, for half the year, this guy has bad blood work, that's gonna have an effect on you that's going to add up over time. And you talk about cardiovascular events that to kill bodybuilders, like a heart attack or a stroke. Well, you think about this when you hear that, because you think about, like having a bad cholesterol, having a bad blood lipid, and you have these bad blood test levels all over the place. Start getting some plaque, some inflammation build up in your veins and arteries. And you do that more and more, long time, and then you get problems build up, okay? So the danger of oral steroids is not an acute danger. It's not an acute danger as in you take them and you automatically like go into liver failure or something because you took too many and it's a poison. Not really. That's I'm not going to say that that's impossible, because I think that there is a couple case studies like in the that have happened. There's a couple of medically documented case studies that have happened, but it's like always on someone that had a pre-existing condition. It's never on somebody that was just normal. It's always somebody that had some kind of pre-existing liver thing, and then, like, maybe they take 100 milligrams Winstrol injections per day for like 3 days or something, and then they like go into liver failure. There's some kind of case study about that, but for like normal people, that's totally abnormal. Like that, like no, not at all. So, you know, for example, like it wouldn't, if you asked me to take 500 milligrams of Dianabol in front of you and be like, and like, put your money where your mouth is, I would do it. Like, I would do it just like for fun, like, or maybe like for like attention. Like, I would probably even take 1,000 milligrams. I would probably even take 1,000 milligrams. You know what? Like, just to like to shock people or something like that. I would not be. I would. Yeah, if I had some kind of incentive, or if some like hot, you know, really hot chick that I thought was really attractive was gonna think I was so cool after I took that 1,000 milligrams of Dianabol, then you know what? I would probably just take that fucking 1,000 milligrams of Dianabol. It's not gonna kill me. Probably make me have diarrhea or something. It'll probably make me have diarrhea. I don't want to take 1,000 milligrams of Dianabol or 500 milligrams of Dianabol because it's going to make me have like crazy water retention, high blood pressure. Jeez, my blood pressure is going to be insane. And a lot of water retention. And we pop in letrozole. And I'm going to be like, you know, if I took 1,000 milligrams in one hit like that, you know, I'd wake up the next morning with this blown up freaking moon face, basketball face. And high blood pressure, and I don't want that, so that's why that's not something that I do on a daily basis, but or that I've ever done. But I have taken up to like, I've taken like 350 milligrams of Anadrol in one day, and I've taken like 150 milligrams of Dianabol in one hit. Like, I'm an experimenter, guys. I'm an experimenter. I like to learn about things and really understand them, be able to put them into my own words, learn about the concepts, and then I like to personally experience the effects. And so that's why I've done, you know, a lot of this. You know, I have a lot of experience with this stuff because I have, you know, friends and acquaintances, and then people that I've worked with, and contacts that, you know, that I know in real life that have used them, and so I can have that knowledge database, and then I have my database from in my head that I know from studying for 13 years, and then also I have my own personal experience combined with that, where I have personally used these things, and so that's what I mean by I'm an experimenter. That's the kind of guy I am. And I like to personally experience things when I experiment with them. I don't just like to like learn about things. I need to be in there hands-on. So, Superdrol is good. And if you're thinking about Superdrol, actually the next question is also a Superdrol podcast. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, okay? Question for the podcast. Could you elaborate your current thoughts on Superdrol? Looking for nutrient partitioning effects, but at the moment can't afford growth hormone or primobolan and want to avoid trenbolone due to my high prolactin sensitivity. I also want the aggression power in the gym. I'm currently on 600 milligrams testosterone and 450 milligrams equipoise. Looking for that perfect third piece to my stack. Wasn't a huge fan of Winstrol due to pain and cramping. Yes, Winstrol gives insane pumps, and so you'll feel like cramping and stuff like that, like in your feet. You know, you can get a cramp in your feet, you know, when you're walking. Or Deca for my prolactin sensitivity. Yeah. This guy doesn't like 19 Nors, so no prolactin or trenbolone for him. But he wants something. You know, I can tell that. You know, he's saying that he can't. That right now, growth hormone and primo too pricey for him, and you know, he doesn't want to do any 19 Nors, so no Deca and Tren, but he wants something that's really going to be a really strong substance that he's going to be able to nutrient partition and just, you know, eat his diet and have good things happen. Kind of put, if you want really good nutrient partitioning effects, I mean, that helps you be able to put, to be honest, that helps you be able to put the diet more on cruise control. So, If you want it, if you're looking for that, yeah, absolutely. Superdrol is the best substance that you can use for that after trenbolone. Superdrol is better than growth hormone, I'd say, at body recomposition. I'd say trenbolone is the best body recomposition drug that exists, followed by Superdrol, followed by growth hormone, in that order. Superdrol really changes the way that your body handles food. It's crazy. Superdrol is a steroid that causes people's bodies to change like a lot in 3 weeks. Okay? The difference between what someone looks like when they start Superdrol and 20 days later, and what they can do too, like what they can do in the gym, it's unlike anything else. It's unlike anything else, the speed that it can do that at. And I really mean that it's even unlike Tren. The speed at which Tren can change you, Superdrol can do it a little bit faster. Not a lot faster, but a little bit. So when you get on the Superdrol, you immediately start getting stronger within days, and your muscle fibers feel different too. And it gives a really good mental confidence. And so you're confident in your strength in the gym on Superdrol, similar to the way that Trenbolone does that too. Confident in your strength. And the way that your muscles feel, the fibers, they feel much stronger, and like they are built to handle heavier loads. So when you something that may have made you feel a little bit nervous before, because of the way that it made your muscles feel a certain way on a certain exercise or something, you will not be feeling that anymore. It will feel like my muscles can definitely handle this. They are built to handle this now. The next time they use it when you're on Superdrol. And then the other thing is that, so you're going to be gaining strength. You're going to be gaining a cosmetic effect, which is a really extreme cosmetic effect of pumped, and it adds no water retention at all. It's like Tren, actually, and the fact that it makes you look more ripped than you actually are. And it really loads up the shoulders and traps with an insane pumped up look. And so you're going to be stronger on this shit than any other substance, basically, on planet Earth. It's more than Tren, more strength than Tren. And you're also going to find yourself gaining weight, gaining muscle, and you're going to find yourself like lightly losing fat at the same time. It's pretty nuts. Because the main thing that you'll notice on Superdrol is, damn, I am getting I'm turning into the Hulk, right? With your muscles. And then you're going to be like, whoa, I'm actually getting a little bit leaner too. And you're going to notice it, like, yeah, I really am actually getting a little bit leaner, while you're noticing, like, damn, I'm turning into the freaking Hulk. So that's on the dosage that I'm talking about right now that delivers those effects is 20 to 30 milligrams of Superdrol per day, and up to 50 milligrams of Superdrol per day. But I don't really like that. 50 milligrams of Superdrol per day is more effective than 30 milligrams per day, and it does pump you up more. So there have been times, like, if you want to look insane on a certain, or look your best on a certain day, maybe what I would do would be, I would take 50 milligrams of Superdrol the two days before I wanted to be the biggest and fullest that I could be. And that would make a significant difference in what I looked like, actually, doing that for a couple days, taking 50 milligrams of Superdrol. So I'm trying to explain the difference between 30 milligrams to 50 milligrams. But 20 to 30 milligrams of Superdrol per day is the sweet spot, where the toxicity is pretty much like, it's not really for me, it's not really an issue to deal with. I actually feel great using those dosages of Superdrol. I don't feel bad or like out of energy or sluggish or anything. I feel great. So at 20 to 30 milligrams per day, and those dosages work too, and they work really good. But the 50 milligrams is definitely stronger. But it's definitely more toxic, and I do get toxic when I take 50 milligrams. If I keep on doing that for, over a couple weeks, then I will get toxicity symptoms. So, Superdrol is more toxic than the other orals. It was made by the same company that researched Anadrol and Winstrol and brought it to the market. But when they were researching the different steroids, they were like coming up, inventing new chemicals. So one of the chemicals that they invented was Superdrol. Another one was Winstrol, another one was Anadrol. And Superdrol it worked really well for what they wanted it to do, preventing muscle wasting. But it also had the high toxicity that the other ones like Winstrol and Anadrol did not have as much. So since they wanted it to be like the most safe medicine possible, that's why they selected Anadrol and Winstrol to bring to market. The company was Syntex, to bring to market and to sell as medicine. And then they didn't sell Superdrol. So then how Superdrol became a supplement was that somebody was looking in these medical studies in the early 2000s of the research of the different steroids, and since they saw that Superdrol, a really strong oral steroid, was in there, and what the chemical was, how it was formed. Since it was an oral steroid, they ordered it. They had China make it. They ordered the powder over the raw steroid powder. And, the only steroids that are like illegal in America or whatever are the steroids that have, they can actually be named and like they're listed by chemical, right? So this one, it had never been brought to market as a medicine, the Superdrol chemical. So it wasn't like listed on the Anabolic Steroid Control Act in America. So then they like had this, super steroid that has like extra toxicity than like the normal steroids that are illegal, like shipped over here. And they started, selling it as dietary supplement. And, there were some people who had, some side effects or some problems from using it, from abusing it. But for the most part, if something was brought over here and, used by as a dietary supplement, sold in the U.S., and had like kids using it and stuff, did it kill anyone? No one ever died from Superdrol. So that's what I think about Superdrol and toxicity. Those are my thoughts, and then you can come to your conclusions on them.
For the guys looking to get on the phone and have a conversation with me, I do the 1-hour phone call consultations for $59, paid over PayPal or credit card processor. Same processor I use for the ebook, Ultimate Guide to ROIDS. I have a good time talking with you guys on the phone. You guys that enjoy the Steroids podcast, watch the Steroids podcast, and then got more questions, want to talk to me. I enjoy every conversation that I have with you guys because I like to know who's listening to the podcast. So I've definitely really been enjoying doing the 1-hour phone call consultations with you guys. So hit me up at steroidspodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to schedule one of those with me.
If you would like your questions to be answered on the Steroids podcast, go to steroidspodcast.com and leave a comment with your questions, or email or private message steroidspodcast@gmail.com or steroidspodcast on Instagram. Until next time.